it's time to go to film school with our resident film expert, Joe Fortunato. And we're going to be talking about one of my favorite movies from back in the 80s, Scarface, starring Al Pacino and Michelle Pfeiffer. And Joe, I guess you were surprised that I picked something other than a John Hughes movie this week, right?
Good morning, Jeanne. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, I was, actually. I thought you'd pick an 80s comedy or something, but happy to do a little change of pace. We're still in the 80s, as you mentioned, but it's certainly not a John Hughes comedy. This is a hardcore, very R-rated gangster film, Scarface. It was released in December 8th, 1983, so we're coming up on its 40th anniversary. It was directed by Brian De Palma, written by Oliver Stone, based on the original film by Howard Hawks and Ben Hecht from 1932, also called Scarface. Very loosely based. They're pretty different films. But and as you mentioned already, stars Al Pacino and Michelle Pfeiffer. This wasn't a film that did really well when it came out. It was only the 16th highest grossing film of 1983. But it has become sort of a hardcore classic with many fans such as yourself. And it was ranked the number 8 top 50 cult film of all time by Entertainment Weekly. The film was dedicated to Ben Hecht and Howard Hawks, as I mentioned, who are the writer and director of the original Scarface. For those who don't know, Scarface, the name, was actually the nickname of Al Capone, so it had some real-life gangster roots there. Al Pacino has said that Tony Montana is one of his favorite characters he's ever played. Well, that's pretty big stuff when he's also played Michael Corleone. Brian De Palma, the director, liked the script so much that he dropped out of directing Flashdance to direct this film. And Oliver Stone, who was sort of a little bit of a neophyte at the time, he was paid $300,000 to write the screenplay, and at the time, that made him the highest-paid screenwriter ever, which is kind of quaint when you think about it these days. And Oliver Stone said that he actually named Tony Montana after his favorite American football player, Joe Montana. So people who make that joke are actually kind of correct. And when De Palma submitted the film to the MPAA, the ratings board, they gave it an X, and then he made some cuts and he resubmitted the second time. Again, X. So they made some more cuts, and they gave him an X again. He goes, I'm not making any more cuts. So they brought in a panel of experts, including real narcotics officers, who stated that, the film was an accurate portrayal of real life in the drug underworld, and ultimately it was sort of an anti-drug film, and it should be widely seen. And so somehow this convinced the ratings board to give it the R, which it has now.
I was really surprised to see that you said that it wasn't really that popular at the time. I remember going to see it when it first came out. I was absolutely riveted by Pacino's portrayal of this kind of, he starts out not necessarily mild-mannered, but he turns into just this crazed drug addict, drug dealer, just driven by ego and addiction. And it was just, to me, it was Al Pacino's kind of breakout performance at the time. Am I correct in that, or is that just my imagination thinking that he was a star, but he wasn't as big as he was until Scarface? Or am I wrong on that?
I guess that's a matter of opinion. I don't know. I think if you're already Michael Corleone, I don't know how you can break out much more than that. I'll be honest with you. I don't really love this movie. I know a lot of people do, so I'm not being critical of your favoritism.
I'm offended, Joe.
In fact, like I said, it's sort of developed into more of a cult film,
right?
Especially in the rap world, it's really popular in the rap world. In fact, the studio wanted to re-release the film, or they did re-release the film in 2003. And the studio wanted Brian De Palma to change the soundtrack so that it included rap songs, and De Palma refused to do that. But if you get the disc or the Blu-ray, there's some special things on there that talk about its importance in the rap community and rap culture and so on and so forth. So it's kind of interesting how it does definitely has taken on a life of its own, even though it was only mildly successful originally. We like to talk about casting sometimes, and Al Pacino wanted Glenn Close to play Elvira,
really,
which went to that's the role that Michelle Pfeiffer got. But the studios didn't think she was sexy enough, which is sorry, Glenn. There was a number of other people that were considered or auditioned for the role. Again, kind of a who's who at the time. Actually, some young people. Courtney Cox would have been unknown at the time. Gina Davis, Carrie Fisher, Kelly McGillis. This is an odd one. Lorraine Newman from Saturday Night Live. Sharon Stone, Celia Ward, Rosanna Arquette. I could go on. Kim Basinger, Jodie Foster. So, it was a pretty wide net of people that were being considered for that role.
Well, it turned out great. Again, kind of one of my favorites of the time. It was just so dramatic. I mean, that one scene where he's wearing kind of this polyester shirt and there's a mountain of cocaine on a mirror in front of him, and he's just kind of going crazy. So that's the part that I remember. That
there's the myth that he snorted real cocaine on camera, and that's not true. I can't say that he didn't off camera.
Yeah, it was the 80s after all, right?
The cocaine that was used on film was supposedly powdered milk.
Oh.
And even though it was just powdered milk, it actually kind of screwed up Pacino's nasal passage.
Well, I would think.
For years, he had trouble with his nose. And one other fun fact that I'd like to share is that Steven Spielberg and De Palma had been friends really since the two of them began making studio films in the 70s. And they made a habit of visiting each other's sets, which is pretty common for those guys at the time. Anyway, Spielberg was on hand on one of the days where they were shooting the big Colombians' initial attack on Tony Montana's house at the end of the film. So De Palma let Spielberg direct a couple of the shots where the attackers first enter the house. So there's a little bit of Spielberg in there, which I love.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being on with us again this morning. Joe Fortunato, he is our professor extraordinaire of film studies, taking us to film school with Scarface, starring Al Pacino and Michelle Pfeiffer. Time one more for Stephanie with traffic.